Hello, I'm Wendy Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Realizing Potential. Always celebrating Women's History Month, and of course, it is traditionally celebrated during the month of March, but I'm one of those individuals that recognize the impact and value that women have made and continue to make throughout society globally each and every day of the week. And so, having said that, I'm honored to have today's guest who is going to share with us a little bit about her story as it relates to contributing through to society and making an impact through her consultancy business. And she is none other than Dr. Sonja Johnson. How are you today?
I am doing well this morning. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Tell our viewers a little bit about your background, your academic background, your career path and journey, and of course, the inception of your consultant group, which is entitled Delta, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Well, I tell you, I am originally from Illinois, and I really was raised in a law enforcement family. My father is a retired chief of police. My grandfather was a deputy sheriff. And oddly, my mother was a speech and language pathologist. I fell into the law enforcement arena early in my career. I have an undergrad degree in sociology and employee relations. And I'll say that when I started my undergrad work back then, they did not have a focus in criminal justice, which was unfortunate for me because I really had a love and a passion for the law enforcement arena, but they didn't have a degree program for that. So what I did was I focused my career path in taking, they did have specialized courses in that. So what I did was I focused my coursework in the criminal justice arena. From there, I went on to do internships in the criminal justice arena, probation, corrections, parole. I went back and I received my master's in public administration and my PhD in public policy and administration as well. I went that route to really complement the law enforcement background, educational background, and professional experience because I had a desire to really change my career path earlier on after having really done a lot of work, about 20 years of professional work in the community supervision path. Okay. And so I really had a desire to change my path of direction, still staying in the law enforcement arena, but focusing more on the administrative processes of law enforcement and the court system. And I really, really wanted to really make an impact and a contribution to the field of law enforcement and criminal justice by doing it from an administrative perspective, particularly as it pertains to policy. So that's a really abbreviated background, but that's really how I got to be where I am today. Yeah.
Very good. One of the goals that we have, certainly with this platform, is to encourage and inspire individuals who may want to pursue similar pathways. But in doing that, I think it's essentially important that we are very transparent in terms of some of the challenges, the expectations, the opportunities to improve. Will you share some of those that I just presented that you've encountered, and what are you specifically doing as it relates to Delta Consulting in trying to make that administrative impact in the criminal justice, social justice space?
So what I would say is this, the law enforcement arena, the criminal justice system in itself is a male dominated system or culture. Okay, so for an African American female, a female period in the law enforcement arena, in the criminal justice arena. It's difficult. You're constantly fighting those uphill battles. So I would say that it was critical. The education piece was critical. The continued drive for additional knowledge and information and experience, and just really kind of getting in where I saw an opportunity to learn and to be able to pour into the profession, so to speak. I would say that in doing that, criminal justice, law enforcement, all of it, it is very fluid. It changes constantly. And much of what happens is based upon current events, okay? And so policy is driven by those current events. The policy doesn't always make sense because we often are driven by what we do to impact how we police or how we formulate our criminal justice processes based on current events and the policies that are a derivative from that, okay? So I would say that the impetus toward me really wanting to make a continued impact in the profession was to create a consulting business that was really a one-stop shop, so to speak, that addresses everything that not just law enforcement entities, but nonprofit, government, businesses really face and address in today's world, okay? So, we're dealing with, in law enforcement, obviously, we're dealing with a lot. We're dealing with use of force issues. We're dealing with ethics issues. We're dealing with conduct issues. We're dealing with recruitment and retention issues across the board. So I wanted to develop an entity of subject matter experts that could go in and work with agencies to really analyze and help them in developing innovative and evidence-based concepts to implement to make their agencies what they should be, and to also, more importantly, make them sustainable and to provide a solid foundation to groom experts in this area. Does that make sense? I really was, I'm very passionate about not abandoning. I think sometimes when things occur, as bad as they may be, we focus a lot on the tragedy of the event. And we don't necessarily take a step back to really sit down and formulate a plan that addresses not just the tragedy, but how we sustain ourselves to move forward. And at the same time, how we can groom the people that are delivering these services. And again, as I say, it's not just law enforcement, it's in every industry. And I believe that all businesses are in need of services, a consulting service such as this, that would address those challenges that businesses meet today.
So when you were speaking, I had numerous thoughts running through my head, and absolutely there is a need for you and your consultant business, as you so eloquently said, throughout various facets of society. But I'm going to take the liberty and liken you to Judy Smith, who is known as the fixer, worked for President Bush, and the amazing political drama scandal was based on the character Olivia Pope was based on Judy Smith. And so you reminded me of her when you were speaking in terms of the work that you're doing So oftentimes when organizations, entities, businesses, whether they be profit or nonprofit or government based, drop the ball, or in many cases epically fail in terms of proper engagement and representation of those that they are held responsible for, then someone needs to come in. And so I'm always taken aback. How did they get there? To me, these behaviors should be very obvious in terms of not falling in that direction or responding in such a negative or horrific way. Um, George Floyd comes to mind, and of course the list is long. And the Breonna Taylor case is still going on, and so there are too many to count, too many known and too many unknown. And so you're often wonder where do individuals fail in their expression of humanity. And so I'm sure you delve into that and then have to then educate because so often you and I and those that look like us share the same gender. We have to navigate these systems in a manner that allows us to just basically survive on a day-to-day basis. And so it's difficult for me and a lot of individuals to fathom when people operate outside of that space, or those that display those behaviors that do not align with humanity. And hopefully I'm framing this in a way that further expresses why there is a need for a consulting firm such as yours.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And I would say, again, not just in law enforcement, but in everything,
Sure.
we have to really be cognizant of um, who we're bringing in to represent and to and oftentimes be the authority or the person that is in charge of executing whatever it is that we do in our businesses. And in doing that, it's imperative that we have checks and balances that are aligned with our vision and our mission of our organizational, uh, businesses, so to speak. Um, what we're finding is that oftentimes organizational culture is not assessed, okay? And we spend a lot of time on the external, okay? But we spend really no time on the what's going on inside. And I say you cannot deliver services in excellence. You cannot serve your people, your consumer, your communities, your constituents, your citizens. You can't serve if your internal organization is not healthy. You always have to have a pulse on your internal organization and understanding, where people are at, what are the drivers, what are the motivations. All of those things are very important. So this consulting business helps agencies, again, as I said, both for-profit, non-for-profit, government, across the board, because it's all important to every entity. It's critical. So this consulting business is, like I indicated, more or less a one-stop shop that addresses those things, that helps to call attention to it first, because oftentimes we don't want to talk about that.
Sure.
And that in law enforcement specifically, that really is the culture of law enforcement. They often, the culture is that they often don't want outside entities assessing their operation, their service delivery. They want to make those assessments and make those determinations themselves. And as we know, that's that's really not a best standard of practice. That's not a best standard of practice. So
For many reasons, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Certainly, one I would imagine is oftentimes that's almost like we, are guilty of self-diagnosing ourselves and then trying to then find the magic elixir. So we're going to be the attending physician. We have all these symptoms, and so we're going to fix ourselves. And that's not always the responsible thing to do. More oftentimes that it is not the responsible thing to do. You need to defer to the experts. And then those are the individuals who also bring an objective lens to the moment, and helping you to move on. And then oftentimes, if we do try to self-diagnose and exercise methods in which to then improve, we miss that moment of being fully transparent, and acknowledging what it is that we're doing wrong. What's at the core of these symptoms, and then the next step, taking those action steps to course correct.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a myriad of things, and so that's why we need someone with your level of expertise to come in and hold that mirror up. Let me then let's embrace, almost like the 12-step program. You've got to acknowledge this is a problem.
It oftentimes is.
Yes, and then what are we going to do to make the next steps to correct that or fix it?
Absolutely, and it's setting those benchmarks, right? Because here's another problem, so to speak, in that all entities have policies and procedures, but oftentimes they're collecting dust, right? We don't look at them. We don't go back to reassess them. And as I indicated, just in law enforcement alone, that's a very fluid profession. It changes daily. And so along with that, so do your guiding procedures need to also be reassessed and assessed and reassessed and assessed to be able to be in line with the changes that are occurring on a daily basis. So, and again, that's in any entity. So policy development, policy analysis, policy implementation are all very critical components. And those benchmarks are a part of that, because creating the benchmarks forces the entity to go back and reassess. If we create it and we never look back, then we're not solving any problems.
Indeed. And you're right. And so are we evolving as time and society continues to evolve? I've written an article just on that and it was on the lack of inequity as it relates to women and women of color at the administrative ranks in higher education. And it's entitled "Still Too Few." Hobson's Burns, Ursula Burns, Melody Hobson, and Rosalind Brewer in the higher education space. And again, it's just bringing that mirror. And you and I exist in these spaces all the time, and then we're clamoring and very hungry to see someone or engage or network with someone who mirrors us. We know them. We work with them. I'm looking at one right now. We have a lot of the same mutual colleagues and very dear friends. But when we get in certain spaces and certainly elevated spaces and ranks, there is that huge absence. So yes, you consultancy firm like yours to educate those organizations on why it's important to represent the greater society, creating equity, inclusion, and of course, diverse environments. Tell us before we wrap up some of your clients, if you can, or individuals or entities that you've worked with, how organizations can reach out to you for support and guidance.
Absolutely. So we launched the consulting business on January the 17th. So we're very new, and we are really working hard at drumming up our clientele. We're working with trying to introduce a suite of training components in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, in strategic planning, in ethics, in policy development and analysis. We also are developing a training component in chaplaincy, because chaplaincy is a really popular topic right now, particularly as we move toward collaborating in the mental health space, collaborating law enforcement in the mental health space. So health and wellness in law enforcement, not just for dealing with tragedy and difficult situations that they face all the time, but also for the officers as well. Everyone in law enforcement there, I liken it to military personnel who are oftentimes exposed to very stressful and tragic situations on a constant. But for them, it may be for a 4-year period. For a law enforcement officer, it could be for a 30-year period. Mm-hmm. So the stress is even more compounded and compacted. So that chaplaincy component is very important today. Ethics, of course, where there's just a myriad of components that we have, again, subject matter experts to assist agencies, organizations in developing programs, plan of actions, grant management, and grant writing. Also very important. We offer those services as well. Law enforcement compliance as well, going in, addressing whether or not your agency is in a space or a place to enter into a process such as law enforcement accreditation. Working with an agency and getting them through that process as well. So these are all things that we offer. You can definitely check out Delta at Delta Consulting Management LLC.com. That's Delta Consulting Management LLC.com. You can also reach out to us on Facebook at Delta Consulting Management LLC, and also on Instagram as well. So those are our platforms to reach out to us. You can book time to meet and so that we can consult with you, obviously, through our website. Very simple. And of course, you can reach us via email if you want to drop us an email at Delta Consulting Management LLC at Delta Consulting. I'm sorry, let me get that right. It's, did I lose you?
No, still here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes,
That's okay.
You can reach us via email at Delta Consult 2021 at Delta Consulting Management LLC.com. You can reach us at our email at Delta Consult 2021 at Delta Consulting Management LLC.com.
Great. And our producer will have those in the lower third. So we'll share, the viewers will have an opportunity to capture that. Before Perfect. We wrap up, would like to learn a little, you're obviously a very busy woman. I understand what it takes to, operate a consulting firm. And it really is, when you're in that entrepreneurship space, it is 24 hours, 7 days a week. You wake up with it on your mind. How can you?
I do.
I know. How can you best serve your clients and, meet their needs? So thank you for that, and for addressing with that. I don't want to say it's a void, but the need is so significant. So we need a Delta, and hopefully you will be able to replicate on every corner throughout society. And so I wish you success in that endeavor, you and your partner. But I want to learn a little bit more about you, the personal side. Mm-hmm. And so I gave you a homework assignment when we spoke the other day. So if you could just, before we wrap up, share with our viewers, if you had the opportunity to invite 3 individuals to a dinner party at your home, and they've on an international status, individuals that our viewing audience would likely be familiar with, who would those individuals be, and what meal would you serve?
So it was a great question, and I think I probably thought more about that, because so many people that
Yeah.
I would love to have an opportunity to meet with. But I tell you, I thought about this and I thought I took the liberty to count the Obamas as one. Okay.
Okay. Very good.
Okay. I took the
Good
liberty
choice.
to count the Obamas as one. Also, as oddly as this may seem, Michael Render, also or otherwise known as Killer Mike, and also Shirley Chisholm. Now, you didn't say whether they could be living or deceased, but
Your choice. That's right.
yes, but those were my three choices, for varied reasons. With the Obamas, obviously, I would love to have an opportunity to just sit down and talk with them in depth about their experience, in during his term and her term as First Lady, and just the things that they endured going through, his presidency, serving as the first Black president. Um, Shirley Chisholm, obviously, she is phenomenal, and
Hmm.
you know, I would just love to have an opportunity again to just hear about her experiences. I love history, and so I love to talk to people who have a really extensive historical background in certain subjects. And I really love to hear about a lot of different things. It's not just a specific set of historical um, uh, components, but I really just like history, and I love going to those subject matter experts in those historical spaces to just talk to them about their experiences and what they went through, and what their observations were, their thought processes, what they think, which is why I really would love to have an opportunity. And he's just right up the road. I often wonder if one day I might have an opportunity to just run into him, or, maybe share the same space. But Michael Render, Killer Mike, has such an eclectic perspective on our social
Hmm.
for our social space as what we know of it today. He an Atlanta native, and just really, really keen on what's going on and his innovation, how he thinks, his pulse on the youth of today is just really incredible. So those were my three. And what would I serve? I would serve dishes that I prepared using some of the food that I grow in my garden. I love to garden. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so I grow all kinds of things. So I would probably make a great salad with some of the lettuces that I grow, and I would use some of the herbs that I grow as well, the rosemary and sage, and making some different dishes. Just maybe some hors d'oeuvres, snack items to just sit back and just have a refreshing conversation. So it's me in a
Well,
nutshell.
you are quite the Renaissance woman now, and I'm sure you are, and I'm sure that the gardening helps with kind of a therapy and your overall wellness.
It
And
does. It really
yeah,
does.
I can imagine because going back to our original topic, I'm sure your clients and addressing some of their needs and what you discover and the level of training that require can be consuming, and
Mhm.
even sometimes I'm sure you view as very daunting. Can I really tackle this, and can we see the yield that it certainly deserves? So as we celebrate and honor women, not just throughout March, throughout every day, each and every day of the week. What we do know that is that our overall wellness is critical to not only ourselves but those that we influence and impact. And so I applaud you for sharing that. I applaud you for your practices of self care. One of which I'm sure you have many, and one of which is, as you shared, is gardening. So thank you for that. I'm
Probably
excited
not
about
as many as I should, but I'm a work in progress. Okay.
we listen. We all are. I could tell you some stories. Oh my goodness, we'll have to swap. But I hope to have the opportunity to work with you. I do some unconscious bias training, and so perhaps we can partner in the future. And would love to have
Absolutely.
you. Yeah, and would love to have you come and speak to our students because
Would love it.
yes, as they prepare to embark upon their careers post graduation, we understand that it is just essentially and critically important that they understand the systems that they're going to come against, but it is then their responsibility as team members, as colleagues within their industry, and then as leaders to make, that seismic shift that is necessary in improving and dismantling some of those systems that have remained stagnant, that impede growth, that bring harm and detriment to communities and populations across the country.
Yes, and I would end on this note just by
Mhm.
simply saying that, it is really as we kind of matriculate through our professional careers, I think when we get to a certain point, we understand the bigger picture, and
Yes.
we understand that it's really incumbent upon us to um, not work in silos, and, and to work together to help groom who comes behind us, right? Because at some point we will be able to go and sit down, hopefully, right? And so we have to know that we have we've executed our due diligence in making sure that we have groomed those behind us to come forward and to carry forward, to carry things forward. So it is really important for us to really think of the bigger picture and to understand that we can't work in silos. We really have to create those collaborations and those partnerships. And there's enough of what needs to be done out there. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we don't have to hoard anything if we can work together to try to bring people forward. These children today, the youth today, they are so bright and they're so creative and they're so talented. I'm just always amazed at just the ideas and what they're doing just today and how they generate income. It's just amazing. And so to work with them, to continue to cultivate them so that they can, step in and take over, that is the big picture. That's what we're responsible for doing. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and you certainly are doing the work to ensure that that occurs. I've enjoyed this conversation. Know that you are always
Likewise.
welcome back.
Thank you.
Continued success with the consulting enterprise. I know it's going to be a big hit. It is certainly needed, and I would love, as I shared earlier, to have you come before our students and continue to share their story and give them some tips and strategies. And so, again, let's have a couple conversations offline. But I wish you
Absolutely.
the utmost success, Dr. Sonja Johnson. It's been a pleasure chatting with you this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Likewise.
Thank you. Viewers, as always, thank you for joining me for another edition of Realizing Potential. I'm Wendy Wilson, and I look forward to seeing you next time.